kerosene jug, a closed door, and a split-second decision changed the Patraw family forever on a cold February morning in 1942. As Timothy Patraw attempted to rekindle a fire in the family's wood stove, the contents of the kerosene jug ignited unexpectedly. In his own words, "The kitchen door happened to be open, so I went to throw the jug out. At the very moment I threw the jug, she shut the door. The jug struck the door and bounced back into the room. An instant later, it exploded, and the whole room was in flames. Timothy's wife, Myrtle, and their teenage daughter, Harriet, were killed in the fire, leaving Timothy to pick up the pieces of his shattered family." How does a family endure decades of economic hardship, factory labor, personal loss, and even a devastating house fire, and still leave behind a legacy of resilience and growth? The story of my great-great-grandparents, Timothy and Myrtle Patraw, is one of survival, hard work, and deep family roots planted in the Midwest. Their son, Jack, my great-grandpa, is just one branch of a family tree shaped by love, labor, and loss. Timothy Marcel Patraw was born June 21st, 1889, in Glenwood City, Wisconsin, one of 4 children, born to William Marcellus Patraw and Amelia Louise Forga. His childhood appears to have been marked by economic challenges typical of rural Wisconsin families at the turn of the century. The 1900 census reveals that his parents couldn't read or write, and the family rented their home in Spring Valley, Wisconsin. By age 16, Timothy was already working as a day laborer in Weston, Wisconsin, according to the 1905 Wisconsin State Census. These early years of hard work probably toughened him up for what was coming, supporting the big family he'd eventually have. Myrtle Ida Wilcox entered the world on September 17, 1891, in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, born to Marvin John Wilcox and Ida Gentle Lucy. Tragedy touched her life early when her father died of pneumonia in Rocky Ford, Colorado, on March 11, 1897, when she was only 6 years old. The 1905 Wisconsin State Census shows 14-year-old Myrtle working as a servant while living with her mother at her grandmother Sarah Lucy's farm in Sumner, Wisconsin. In 1912, at age 21, Myrtle filed a probate application for her father's estate, establishing herself as the sole heir to lots in the city of Rice Lake. Those lots in town probably gave her a little financial security as she started her own family. Timothy and Myrtle married on October 9th, 1909, in Barron County, Wisconsin, when he was 20 and she was 18. Their early married life was spent in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, living with Myrtle's mother. The 1910 census paints a picture of financial insecurity, showing Timothy working as a laborer, doing odd jobs, and having been unemployed for 16 weeks during the previous year. By 1916, the couple had moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, where Timothy found work as a helper. This began a period of frequent relocations throughout St. Paul, with the family living at no fewer than 9 different addresses between 1916 and 1935. Timothy registered for the draft in World War I on June 5, 1917. He was described as being of medium height, medium build, with brown eyes, dark hair, and one ear defective. Timothy worked as a finisher at Waldorf Paper Products Company from approximately 1917 to 1926. The paper industry was booming in Minnesota during this period, with the state becoming a major center for paper production thanks to its abundant forests and water resources. Working as a finisher likely involved completing the final stages of paper production, including cutting, trimming, and preparing paper products for shipping. This was physically demanding work in a noisy, fast-paced environment, often with few safety regulations compared to modern standards. Later, Timothy became a grinder at Union Brass and Metal Company from about 1930 to 1944. Metal foundries in this era were hot, dangerous workplaces, where workers shaped and finished metal products. As a grinder, Timothy would have operated machinery that smoothed and polished brass and metal items, requiring precision and physical strength while exposing workers to metal dust and loud machinery. The Great Depression impacted the family significantly, as it did for millions of American families. The 1930 census shows them renting a home for just $5 a month. That would be equivalent to about $85 today. And Timothy was listed on the unemployment schedule. By 1940, their situation had improved somewhat. They owned their home, valued at $1,200, and Timothy had worked all 52 weeks of 1939, earning $1,600, which is approximately $33,000 in today's dollars. Their ability to purchase a home during this period speaks to their determination and resourcefulness during America's worst economic crisis. Throughout these years, Timothy and Myrtle welcomed 10 children into their family, raising them during some of America's most challenging times, including World War I and the Great Depression. Floyd William Patraw was born in 1910. He worked as a machinist at American Hoist Derrick and lived in Ramsey County. He married Tilly Anita Halverson in 1934, and they raised 4 children together. Floyd passed away in 1996 at age 85 from a heart attack, leaving behind 14 grandchildren and 16 great-grandchildren. Harold Gordon Patraw was born in 1912. He served in the U.S. Marine Corps during World War II and held various jobs, including machine operator and building applicator. He married Lillian Hazel Monson in 1932, and they had 3 children. In 1963, he was living in Portland, Oregon, where he remained until his death in 1979. Jack Leroy Patraw, born in 1914, my great-grandpa. He worked as a laborer and a truck driver. He married Helen Florence Grosvenor in 1934, and they had 12 children together. Family stories indicate that Jack and Helen once owned a bar called Jack and Helen's near the markets in St. Paul. Family relationships were complex. Some of their children were temporarily placed in foster care and later adopted by other families. Jack passed away in 1985 in St. Paul at age 70. Richard Warren Patraw, born in 1915, he also worked in the warehouse industry. He married Pauline Cecilia Gibbous around 1932, and they had 6 children together. After Pauline's death in 1997, Richard married Catherine Julia Sullivan in 1999 at the age of 83. He was a decorated World War II veteran and lived to be 87 years old, passing away in 2003 in St. Paul. Geraldine Amelia Patraw, born in 1917. She worked as a clerk while living with her parents. She married Oliver Parlin Skirdall, with whom she had 3 sons. Geraldine lived a long life, passing away at age 91 in 2009 in Minnesota. Virginia Kathleen Patraw, born in 1919. She married Wilmer Dale Trieg in 1940, and they had 5 children together. After Wilmer's death, she married Gilbert Schmidt in 1981. Virginia lived to be 93 years old, passing away in 2012 in Maplewood, Minnesota. Philip Clayton Patraw, born in 1922. He worked at Armour & Company. Philip married Wanda Wenzel in 1941 in Dakota County, Minnesota. He eventually moved to Nevada, where he passed away in 1987. Harriet Maxine Patraw, born in 1926. Died in the house fire that claimed her mother's life. She was only 15 and a junior deputy sheriff at her local school, a detail that speaks to her spirit and community involvement. Gordon Timothy Patraw, born in 1928. He served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. After the war, he worked as a truck driver and married Catherine Julia Sullivan, with whom he had 15 children. Gordon passed away in St. Paul at the age of 68 in 1996. Norma Ray Lillian Patraw, born in 1932. She survived the fire with severe burns and married Charles Trieg in 1955 in St. Paul. The devastating house fire on February 6, 1942, marked a tragic turning point for this family. The event occurred just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. While the country was focused on the war, the Patraw family was fighting their own battle at home. At about 7:15 in the morning, the kids were still in bed, and Timothy and Myrtle were in the kitchen. Myrtle was focused on her own tasks, with her back turned to Timothy. As Timothy attempted to rekindle a fire in the family's wood stove, the contents of a kerosene jug ignited unexpectedly. In Timothy's own words, "The kitchen door happened to be open, so I went to throw the jug out. At the very moment I threw the jug, she shut the door. The jug struck the floor and bounced back into the room. An instant later, it exploded, and the whole room was in flames. The Minneapolis Star reported that the explosion was heard a mile away. Timothy and his 13-year-old son Gordon escaped with minor burns. Gordon jumped from a second-story window, a desperate act that speaks to the intensity of the fire. Timothy broke a window to rescue 9-year-old Norma, whose clothing was in flames. The newspaper description of how her clothing was in flames when her father rescued her is an image that captures both the horror of the moment and Timothy's heroic efforts to save his daughter. Tragically, Myrtle, 50, and Harriet, 16, perished in the fire. Newspapers reported that Timothy could, quote, hear my wife screaming inside, but the flames were so bad by then, I couldn't even get near the house. The stark reports reveal the traumatic nature of the event and the helplessness that Timothy must have felt. Family stories passed down and recorded in documents note that when the bodies of Myrtle and Harriet were found, they both had their hands over each other, like they reached for each other at the same time, suggesting a final, heartbreaking moment between mother and daughter. 9-year-old Norma suffered severe burns over 90% of her body and was initially given slight chance for recovery, but she did survive. A testament to advances in medical care for burn victims that had improved significantly by the 1940s. Harriet had been a junior deputy sheriff at school district number 29, and her loss was felt beyond the immediate family, with her school community also mourning her passing. News of the tragedy appeared in papers across Minnesota, including the Winona Daily News and the Evening Tribune in Albert Lea. It's strange to think that while the world was caught up in World War II, this family tragedy still made headlines across the state. Following the devastating fire that claimed Myrtle and Harriet, Timothy rebuilt his life. He married Florence Wagner in September 1943 in Northwood, Iowa. The couple worked together at Luger Furniture in the 1950s, with Timothy making hinges for tabletops and Florence assembling drawers. In his later years, Timothy worked as a sexton at Zion Lutheran Church, taking care of the church grounds and building. Timothy lived to the age of 87, passing away on December 22nd, 1976 in Ramsey County, Minnesota. His obituary noted he was survived by 9 children, 52 grandchildren, 94 great-grandchildren, and 2 great-great-grandchildren. A remarkable legacy that continues to grow today. The Patraw story isn't just about tragedy or being poor. It's about plain old stubbornness and love that kept a family going through thick and thin. As their great-great-granddaughter, I'm amazed at what they lived through and overcame. Timothy and Myrtle were just ordinary folks living through extraordinary times. They moved from country to city, survived 2 world wars and the Great Depression, worked dangerous jobs in factories, and somehow raised 10 kids through it all. Their lives were part of the bigger American story. The move to cities, the growth of industry, the economic ups and downs of the early 1900s. They remind me that history isn't just made by famous people, but by factory workers, moms, and families just trying to get by. The toughness that got them through hard times, dangerous work, and heartbreaking loss still runs in our family today. Their story, especially that terrible fire in 1942, shows how fragile life can be, but also how strong the human spirit is. It shows how regular families like mine were shaped by the big events of American history, but also how they helped shape that history themselves, one day at a time. Stories like the Patraws are all around us, in our own family trees, waiting to be discovered. What journeys did your ancestors take? What hardships did they overcome? And what legacies did they leave behind? If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of the strength in their roots. At Beyond Generations Genealogy, we don't just research names and dates. We uncover stories. From professional genealogy research to photo restoration, we help families like yours reconnect with their past. You can get more information on Beyond Generations Genealogy at www.beyondgenerationsgenealogy.com. Let us help you bring your family story to life, because your history deserves to be remembered.